Today I've got for you the interview that I did with Big Jay Sorensen. He and I linked up via Zoom and kind of did this just for the WNBC Time Machine Weekend that we had over Halloween weekend, last weekend. So kick back and enjoy. This runs almost an hour, and you'll glean a few insights into how the time machine came about, and a little bit about Big Jay's career, which I'm sure you'll find very interesting. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is Big Jay Sorensen.
Yeah. See, I think today we take internet for granted sometimes, it's like...
We really do. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about what it is and how it works and what it does, it's like, wow, it's I mean, if you had told me 35 years ago when I was at NBC, 34 years ago, whenever it was, that this is how we would do radio, it's like, nah. There'll always be a tower. There'll always be this or that. No, well, guess what?
No, you're 100% right about that. I was just talking to one of the HitOldies guys this morning that works up in Canada. He said the same thing, words to that effect. We all have studios at home and we broadcast live, or we track, or we do something, but who needs a central station studio where everybody is spit into the same microphone that you're using?
I know, that was always disgusting.
It was very disgusting. I always thought of that. Yeah, don't let your tongue touch it.
I always brought a can of Lysol with me and wiped it down.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't spray it into it, and never did that, but I always did that because it's just
it's disgusting. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, there's food particles in there. There's all kinds of, hair. And
how'd you like to be the engineer that had to take the front of the screen, the windscreen off of it and clean it?
No, he probably had to hold his nose when he did it. It's just.
As we always had those foam wind protectors on.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, like
you take them off and just replace the damn things if you were lucky, every 6 months. Usually it wasn't even that often.
No, it's pretty bad, and these are the war stories about radio that people can't understand. Absolutely. Regular folks, just regular people, just to have no clue about how this all works. To them, it's just on. It's just there, and they don't care how it works as long as it does.
Well, that's like you said, same thing with the internet. It's there and it works. And and you being tech savvy, you remember when we all started doing this kind of stuff, we didn't broadcast. We were lucky to get online on AOL and hear that, get our modems going. And it was so slow. It was oh my God, from the time you hit connect until the time you actually got in and did something productive was probably 10 minutes.
Sometimes, yeah.
I remember. And it wasn't that long ago when I started broadcasting on the web live back in 2009.
Wow.
Yeah, it was 2009. It wasn't earlier than that.
Look what we're doing now. We're talking to each other on a private line that is high quality, and you're not picking up a telephone. You're not going to the wall to pick up a phone. I mean, it's amazing. I find it all fascinating.
And you're right. It's a high quality. Sounds just like if we were in a big New York station somewhere.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And the thing that I'm doing is. It's kind of convoluted, but it works. The guy's got a studio and the whole bit. I mean, a hub, and I'm the only one that does my show remotely because I wouldn't do it otherwise. And
where are you? What station are you working at now?
It's called Oldies XL. It's got an app, and it's it sounds pretty good.
Oldies.
I've got all my equipment hooked up here. It's all his stuff except for my mic and my headphones, and it really does sound pretty good on the air.
At oldiesxl.com.
Yes.
Is there any over-the-air component to this, or is it just internet?
Not yet. No. He's not in that league yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to tune in and listen to. You'll have to let me know when you're on.
He's got a lot of syndicated shows on weekends. He's got a lot of MG Kelly stuff, and he seems to be enamored with that.
He's got some good shows. Wow.
Yeah, he does have some. The music he plays is pretty good. I mean, he's obviously a pro, and he researches it, and he knows which songs to play and which ones not to play. And you know what? Sometimes the ones you don't play are the ones that can't hurt you.
Right.
The ones that don't play are the songs that don't hurt you. And I'm a proponent of playing the hits, but I also am a record geek, and I like hearing In a Moment by the Intrigues once in a while. I mean, I just do. I like to hear Nothing But Heartaches by the Flirtations. I don't mind hearing it. I don't want to hear it every day, but that's the kind of. So I've always been a cross between the record geek and the radio listener, and the average listener is not me. The average
hard
listener,
for us to remember that sometimes. We're in this environment every day. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, Sweet Caroline is in their wheelhouse. It's not in mine anymore, but it's in theirs. So I have to respect that, and I have to realize that, and deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much like what Dan Sweeney does.
I think it's something we all go through in as people in this business is what the listener wants and what we think they want. And we need to have as much research as we can without over researching it. And then we have to use our guts. We got to use our gut, and our gut has to be right, because they have a lot of choices now that they didn't have even 5 years ago.
Oh, I think that point's been made perfectly clear here since the pandemic started, because so many people have gone online in one form or another, and radio, over-the-air radio, is suffering to a great degree because of, listener boredom, listener fatigue. They're tired of the endless repetition, but if you don't do the endless repetition and play the hits that they know, then they tune out too. So, boy, what a delicate mix that is.
Yeah, it really is. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Yes, I know. Kind of too late.
Yeah.
Getting to an age now, it doesn't matter anymore. Lost cause. I recall when Dale and I talked last time, and I did a whole interview with Dale over this, and I did a whole interview with Frank Cipolla last time as well. Mm-hmm. And they both pointed to you as really being the guy that formatically and all that kind of put this time machine together in the first place. Dale gave you the go ahead, but maybe it's better if you explain the story rather than what I heard from various sources.
Wow. Okay. Where do I begin? I begin with, I worked on the Joey Reynolds show, and I had been previously working at WPST in Trenton, New Jersey. And I had worked with Joey years before at a station, Joey Reynolds, at a station called 11.7 Jersey Shore. It was 1170 on AM, daytimer, 5,000 watt daytimer. Mm-hmm. And he came in and visited one of our disc jockeys. I think he was the program director at the time, named Charlie Roberts. And Joey came into town one day to visit him. And while I was on the air, all of a sudden I look up in the other studio and I see this guy standing there grabbing a microphone. And I'm going, what's this about? And suddenly it dawned on me who he was. And my stomach did flip-flops because there's Joey Reynolds standing in front of me. So he went on the air for an hour and a half and did a monologue. An hour and a half. And this is on a music station, a top 40 music station. And which is that's his modus operandi. I mean, that's what he does. He just takes over and it's done.
Yeah, right.
And so he did that. And so I got to know Joey very well. And I knew him through the years. We talked, not regularly, but we did talk quite a bit. And when he was at WFIL in Philadelphia, he did a morning show there with Jeff Kaplan, who was at WCBS AM years later as a newsman. And so Joey did the show. And when Howard Stern was fired, they had to look for a replacement at WNBC. So they searched high and low, and they searched within and without, and they tried comedians and Flo and Eddie and people like that. And even George Carlin was being considered the comedian. And they landed with Joey because Dale Parsons wanted somebody with radio background that understood what radio was, and not just, doing it as a lark like these other people might do it. And they landed with Joey. And one day I was sitting on the air at WPST, and my phone rang. It was the hotline or whatever it was. And it was Joey. And he said, "Do you want to work at NBC?" And I said, "There's a bear crap in the woods."
Right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. So he goes, "Well," he says, "it's not a done deal, but you've been highly touted by yours truly and other people," which I was unaware of. People in the industry that knew me. And I ended up going to 30 Rock and interviewed with every suit in the building, it seemed, that are, the RCA building at the time. And I got the job, which was shocking. Here I was in market 128 or whatever, and all of a sudden I'm in New York. It's like, it was like a Three Stooges moment.
And you went through multiple layers of bureaucracy to get there.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. People don't realize that. I mean, I had to schlep into New York to do that, and I was 70 miles away. So I had to do that 4 times before I got the word and they hired me, and that was that. Well, I gave my resignation in, and the guy wouldn't let me leave at PST. And and so he wanted like 3 weeks notice instead of 2 or some crap like that. And I called Dale and I said, "Dale, the guy's being a real jerk. It's like, come on." And he goes, "Hold on a minute. I'll be right back to you." He came back like 3 minutes later and said, "Quit today and we'll pay your severance. We'll pay whatever salary you would have gotten. And you start Monday." And I went, "Okay." So I walked into the PD and I said, "Today's my last day." He was really bummed. He was. And his name was Tom Taylor, who ended up writing for Friday Morning Quarterback. Yes. And he had his own newsletter. Tom is a great guy. And I felt really bad doing that. But it was like my career suddenly was like, boom. So, okay. So I ended up being Joey's sidekick and board operator, which was very unusual. And even the NABET engineers didn't like that, because I was the first person, I believe, in the station's history that was not a NABET engineer running the board. And they didn't like that too much.
Non-union guy in the building? Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did have to join AFTRA, of course, which was the talent union. But that was a problem. So when Joey was they didn't renew his deal, as they did with Soupy Sales as well. What happened was, Dale said, "Listen, take 2 weeks off." I was, okay. He goes, "You're still working here. Your contract's still enforced." I said, "Okay." He goes, "Take 2 weeks off." So I did. It was like decompressing from the Joey Reynolds show, actually, who was my dearest friend. I mean, Joey and I still communicate almost daily. And we've done a couple of projects with TV in it, and we did a brokered show on WABC about 5 years ago. And Joey is still very much in it. He's got a lot of things going on. I can't divulge some of the things that he's talking about, but a lot of things happening. So back to NBC. When I came back from the 2 weeks, Dale said, "Well, we're going to put you on overnight." And I figured, all right, okay. After doing afternoon drive, it was like, overnight. But I thought, well, overnight, that signal goes from Greenland to South America. So,
easily. What is this, a shortwave station? Yes.
Well, it believe it or not, it had a huge reach because it was still a clear channel at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It was still one of those few that didn't have much on the frequency elsewhere. Maybe on the West Coast, and maybe there were some daytimers, but largely it was the blowtorch, like WABC used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, just go on and we're going to do it like an oldies show for now. I said, okay, all right. I'm just going to play oldies. This is be the WNBC format, do what we do here. And, you can talk and you can do this a little bit, and do what you do. He says, I want you to be you. I said, okay, all right, great. And then as time went on, he was hinting that he was going to get all these great jingles and all this stuff from the days of yore. And sure enough, one day he said, well, okay, we're calling this the Time Machine, and I'm going to give you a clock. He said, you can play with it if you need to. I'm going to give you the songs, and if you need to play a request, you can play like for an hour if you want. And, okay, he said, just have fun. So that was when it happened. And Dale gave me the creative freedom, which was unheard of in broadcasting, I think, in a lot of stations, especially on a corporate level like at NBC, and he let me just go. And so I did what I thought was a recreation, which is what everybody's fantasy is as a disc jockey.
WABC.
Of doing yes. That format, or at least something that was a hybrid of it, because in my mind, I was not only doing WABC, but I was channeling WLS, WFIL, WIBG in Philadelphia, which I really loved those two stations, particularly Wibbage, WIBG. I really wanted to work there and almost got a job there.
And in my mind, I've always thought that WNBC Time Machine was better than how WABC did it. If you took WABC, it was tighter. And if you'd thrown Dan Ingram into what you had built, I think it would have, if there was a way to make ABC sound better than they did, that would have been it.
Well, thank you. And it kind of happened organically. I didn't sit there and go, well, let's see, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it. Just happened. And I think that Dale and also the general manager at the time, allowed me the freedom to do it. Now, what's fuzzy for me is, and only Dale can answer this, I'm not sure if they knew or thought that GE, when they came in, was going to sell NBC at the time. I'm not sure. I think they had maybe an inkling that it could happen. And so I don't know if it was just like a Hail Mary. I really don't. I say that with all due respect.
Well, sure.
But I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they knew that it was going to go belly up eventually, or be sold, or traded, or whatever the heck that deal was. It was weird, very weird.
No, it was incredibly weird, but you have to think about it in terms of this. That's one hell of a lot of faith that they had in your abilities to do it. That was like telling you, we know that you're a pro, even though you're from market 162, you shouldn't be there. You should be up here with us. And we have faith that you can do it.
Well, that's a profound compliment. And I guess I wasn't aware of it. I still, to this day, my wife and I have conversations about this. She goes, you don't know what you do you? And I said, what do you mean? She says, you just do it. And it's so natural and it just comes out. And she goes, I can't believe some of the things that come out of your mouth sometimes, nor can I. And, it just happens organically. I didn't sit there and go, well, I'm going to word for word recreate George Michael on WABC. I would make fun of him, if anything.
But
And
that was your
part,
style, though. That's
right,
just, you were just being you. And the funny thing is, these women have a way. Mine tells me that I'm a different person on the mic than where did this person come from? I said, well, I don't know. You didn't know him beforehand?
Right. But you know, the interesting thing is I think that I'm the same guy on the air as I am off the air, because I can make a left turn and in real life, and also do it on the air and make it entertaining somehow. I don't know. People laugh. So, you know, and some people groan because I do a lot of groaners and things like that, but it's part of the whole package. Plus the bonuses that I know the music so damn well, is that I can tell a story about Tommy James and go on for a half an hour.
It's as natural as breathing, though, for us. That's the thing.
Because I've worked with him. I introduced him at shows. I've interviewed him several times over the years. People like that. You know, when you get to sit with the Everly Brothers in a hotel dressing room.
Wow.
You know, that's just. You know, you can't describe that to people. I was on stage at Radio City Music Hall, you know, introducing Benny King and then the Ronettes, and it's wow. When you think about that stuff, it's like, and they were not in their prime at the time. They were not in the hit making prime, but they are well respected names in the business. And my dad even was in the audience. My parents were there. And it was that moment that he realized that, he's doing the right thing, because he wanted me to work for him. He wanted me to make roof trusses. That was his occupation. You know, he owned a business and he wanted me to run it. And when he saw me on stage, I think that was the turning point. It took 16 years for that point to happen, because it took, you know, I started in 1970 on the air. And so there it was, 1986 and going into 87. And, you know, I had already been in the business for what seemed a lifetime, but he really never got what it was to be a guy on the radio. To him, you know, he was a blue collar kind of guy. And there I was, just, you know, picking up a needle and putting it on a turntable or putting a tape in a machine. You know, to him, that was like, that's not work. You know?
I was told that how many times? My God, you're so right about that. You're not doing anything valuable or important. How can you make any money doing that?
Yeah. Well, I think I did okay. You know, I wasn't. Listen, I'm not a household name. They see, and I'm smart enough to know that. I'm not a Stern. I'm not an Imus. I'm not a you know, but I created my own little realm, if you will, and it still exists today. And I have a lot of fans.
Certainly.
People come up to me, or people write me and say, "Oh my God, I remember what you said in 1974 on this station," and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, "Oh my God, really?" You know, it just shocks me.
Right. I forgot about it 5 minutes later. When exactly. That's
So there's where the NBC thing happened with the Time Machine. It was only on just under 2 years, and I was the experiment, and it went so well that Dale and the general manager at the time decided, okay, let's do this on the weekends. So a few of the people that helped Dale put it together, you know, with production and things, some no longer with us, ended up being disc jockeys, and a few others from around the region started doing weekend shows. And to Dale's credit, it just sounded fun. It sounded fun, and a lot of them were emulating what I was doing. Even Dan Taylor at one time called me up in the middle of the night. He goes, "My God, what are you doing? Oh, this is so cool. I want to do this." And so he said, "Would you talk to Dale, you know, for me?" I said, "Sure." You know, I knew of Dan, and I told him, and he ended up doing a couple of shows every weekend on NBC. And you know, we had a good bunch of people. And Dale Parsons has said, and he's probably told this a million times, and I've probably said it a million times, had NBC not sold the station, then the Time Machine could have been a possibility of being the format rotating around Imus in the Mornings show, which would stay the same at the time. And that was a possibility. Even the word Ron Lundy came bantering through, through the banter. His name was mentioned, and I think that he may have even been talked to about maybe joining us. That would have been tremendous. And I think
it would have been huge.
It would have been.
Oh,
huge.
yeah.
And, well, it's a woulda, coulda, shoulda.
I know.
Yeah,
hindsight being what it is.
And I'm speaking very freely here, and I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds. And I don't want to speak for Dale because this was his brainchild. But he said to me, "I know you now, after working with you for well over a year before this time machine started, that you know the essence of what it was to do top 40 radio circa 1970 or 1968 or whatever." And so he gave me the freedom to do it my way, which was his way, but it was my way with a twist. So I took his idea and then molded it into this thing. And I was just trying to remember what top 40 radio sounded like 20 years prior. And I was trying to emulate that to a point, but yet with the WNBC sensibility. Now, WNBC was a personality station. Mm-hmm. You figure all of the people that went through there and guys like Imus and Joey and Soupy and everybody who had worked there prior back in the 70s incarnation of NBC and the early 80s when they really took off. When you think about all those personalities, it was amazing. It was amazing, the talent that was going through that place. And yet it still never reached the place where WABC had done in their heyday. NBC was very popular. And certainly when Stern came aboard, it was must-listen radio. It never quite reached that level of what WABC cumed back in the day.
Well, part of that, of course, was because of the nature of FM came in and stole a lot of the listeners, and I think that had not happened, had it been 1968 instead of 1988, they probably would have been rating-wise in the same place. I can tell you as a listener, however, as far as the overall sound, what did it sound like on the air? I used to listen, I was on active duty up until the early part of 1988. Okay. And I was in Norfolk, Virginia. And I would come, when the ship was in port, I would come out at lunchtime and I would listen. If I happened to be on duty and was stuck there overnight, I would tune. I was a Navy radioman, so I'd go out and I'd turn the R390, our receiver unit, to 660, just so I could hear the overnight time machine while I was on duty in the Radio Shack. It was crazy. Well, they all appreciated it. I could only have it on one speaker in one end of the room. It had to be at a certain level because I was on an aircraft carrier and tastes in there varied from person to person. But It was amazing. I mean, there was nothing else I wanted to listen to. It was the best. And Joey Reynolds, I have to tell you that that was the one singular radio show, top 40 radio show in all of my life. It's my all-time favorite. That man made me laugh more than I've ever laughed in my life. I remember driving up the Jersey Turnpike to go home to Massachusetts on leave. And I was riveted, absolutely glued. I couldn't turn it off, no matter what.
Wow. Yeah.
It was just an amazing thing to me.
Yeah. There are some people who command your attention and they do it with whatever means necessary. And Joey has gone out on a limb so many times and gotten fired for doing that. That it's, his joke is, I've worked at 40 stations.
I never understood that, though, because to me, not only did it come off as totally genuine and natural, but it just was funny. There was no pretext of anything. He just, if a joke was on his mind or if a liner came out, it just came out. I never understood why they fired him. He was 10 times better than Alan Combs thought of being, in my opinion.
And I loved Alan too. I mean, I thought he was a great guy and a lovely man. I miss him.
I remembered him from WHN playing country, but I don't remember him. But I didn't know who he was outside of that.
Yeah, he was an interesting character and a lovely man. It really was. And we were diametrically opposed politically too, but it didn't matter because I knew he was doing a show. And see,
it's stick, of course.
Yeah, I understood that. And I miss him. I miss him a lot. I miss a lot of people. You know, we've lost some amazing characters because I call them characters because I think every one of us that do this, we're characters. We're
characters in a show, in a play. Yeah. Yes.
Well, it is a show. It is a show after all. And when all is said and done, we are the carnival barkers almost. You know, we're the ones that have to attract people to buy a product, so to speak. And sometimes the product is the station. Sometimes the product is a car. Sometimes the product is whatever pills that are being touted these days. Sure. We have to make that happen. And that's something that to me, it's innate. I don't think about it. I just do it. And that's, I think,
that's the hallmark of the best, actually.
Well, thank you. But that's what Dale, I think, was going for because I'm bringing it back to what the Time Machine was it was a combination of every station I ever listened to, and with the main focus on the sound of WABC. When in their heyday, on their music radio days. And they evolved from the beginning days. If you listen to pre-Beatles WABC, it was kind of lame.
It was.
Compared to what it became. And then by the late 60s and early 70s, they were the sound. It was at a time when FM was starting to happen. It was at a time when tastes were changing dramatically, and we began the fissure of formatics and formats. Yes. Where suddenly there was an all soul station, there was an all this station, there was a lot of adult contemporary stations were popping up, and different incarnations of what Top 40 was at one time, and it became such a mishmash that it was confusing, I think. But I think it's still going on today, where there are so many formats that, you don't delve from that format. No, you don't. You can't play that because somebody doesn't like that kind of music. Well, okay, back in the day,
we played it all.
You played Frank Sinatra, and then you played the Rolling Stones back to back. Like, wow.
And nobody thought twice about it. We had back then what someone affectionately called variety as opposed to diversity.
Yeah,
That's an
interesting thing. And you either turned it off if you didn't like it, or you sat through it and waited until the next song came on. If that's what you were listening for. I was listening to the music, but even at a young age, I was listening to how and what the DJs were saying.
Said in between the records.
And then how they put it together. In other words, how it happened, and the science of it, because it is a science. And I was always amazed before I even knew, what a studio looked like. I would listen to Ingram and people like that, and all of these things were popping up out of nowhere. Right, WABC Super Hit 1, all that stuff was happening, and it was happening so quickly. But I didn't know that Ingram actually had to hand the engineer a tape cartridge, and then set it up, and then cue him by pointing, at the engineers to know when the next thing would happen. And it was all orchestrated. Now, I didn't know that at the time when I was young. I didn't realize that, and how intricate that truly is. And I don't care who you were at any top 40 station. If you had engineers, that was just amazing how that all happened. And frankly, if you didn't have board operators, engineers, it was even more amazing. And I was able to do that myself with 6 6 cart machines at NBC, 6 cart machines, 2 turntables, and 3 reel-to-reel decks. And they were all sometimes running at once, and it was amazing how I was somehow able to keep that pace up for 5.5 hours every night.
And you went home exhausted.
Yes. Sometimes I couldn't go to sleep because I was so buzzed from what happened the night before. I mean, it really was like that for me. You can ask my wife; she knows. I mean, it was sometimes I couldn't fall asleep because it was just I was still so wound up from doing this marathon every night, and I looked forward to the weekend so I could recharge.
Yeah.
But then on Sunday nights I would be sitting up all night doing bits and writing little notes down and putting together these vignettes I did, these 60-second, and that's what was happening this week, 1968, and then a jingle and blah, blah, blah. It was all very well produced, and I did it all myself. And I am still amazed. I look back at that and go, how did I do that?
I'm speechless because I'm listening to you tell this story. As a jock myself, who started in 1980, we were still very much in that mode where everything was, all the commercials and the jingles were on tape cartridges, and we still had vinyl in the studio. So your hands never stopped moving. No, never. The whole show.
In fact, I used to edit the phone calls while after I finished talking to somebody, while a 2.5 minute record was on, I would be editing the ums and uhs, and because regular people don't speak the way we do, they don't, and I'm doing a lot of ums and uhs and stopping down and saying a lot in this conversation right now. Mm-hmm. I would edit all that stuff out, so what you heard on the air seconds later was I don't think my hands ever moved that fast with a splicing block and a razor blade and a grease pencil and then splicing tape, to put together a coherent conversation with somebody that lasted maybe 8 seconds, but it was taken down from a 30-second thing. And the person's going, I would say, "Hi, WNBC, who's this? This is Wendell from Brooklyn. All right, Wendell, what do you want to hear? I want to hear, can you play the Carpenters for me? Yeah, okay, which song? For All We Know. Okay, all right. What's your favorite station? WNBC.
Yeah, of course.
So I had to take all those little pieces out to make it sound coherent and make it sound like the guy wasn't a moron, and a lot of times they were, but I can't control who they were, but I was able to control how it sounded on the air.
And it took real talent to do that, and then air the prank call in such a way that you can keep your license. That way.
Well, yeah, I used to. No, but sometimes I would use the prank call to my advantage.
Well, I have to, yeah.
Yeah, and I would get the last laugh, on it because I'm snarky.
Of course.
I'm just as snarky as they are, which is funny.
No, worse, because if we weren't as snarky as they were, we wouldn't have a job.
Well, frankly, I think part of the WNBC persona was snark. And I think the whole station had snark, at least in the last 5 years or so of the station.
You remember the campaign slogan they had on the billboards: "If we weren't so bad, we wouldn't be so good."
Right, and there's only one place for people like us.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I mean, and that really kind of was true because it was like Mad Magazine. We had the usual gang of idiots. I mean, it was an SHI show. You know what I mean? It was just, it really was. It was a plethora of comic geniuses that walked through those doors. I mean, it really was. It just frighteningly amazing.
So you talked about missing people. And this entire weekend that I'm doing this time machine recreation is I'm dedicating this to the guy who was kind of my partner in crime for this particular one, and that's WBLQ's owner, Chris DiPaola. Mm-hmm. Chris passed away What was the date? It was a week from Thursday, so a week ago Thursday, whatever that night was.
Yeah.
It's ironic because he texted me, and it was something out of the blue. I announced this song from England Dan and John Ford Coley, and he comes up at 10:30. He says, and it's John Ford Coley's birthday. Oh, okay. So, and then I thought nothing of it. And apparently, the next morning, I got woken by the guy that was doing the Saturday morning show, and he was texting me Friday morning. I didn't expect him to be in the station Friday morning. He says Chris DiPaola died, and this is at 6:30 in the morning. And I looked down and I said, "What?" And I texted Chris's number. I said, "Please tell me this is a joke." And no, his best friend called me shortly thereafter to fill me in on what was going on. Yeah. So we're dedicating this to him the entire weekend. Excuse me. And I would like to give a copy of this interview to his wife, if you don't mind, because she knew how much WNBC meant to him. Yeah, he grew up with you and Dale and the Time Machine, and he has told me so many times how that one show is what got his interest in radio. That was the entire reason he does what he does, because of what you guys did. Well, so I'd like to give this to her, the packaged version, as a gift. And
that's lovely. That's really lovely. You know, I will tell you that I only actually was in his presence one day. One day. And because I live about maybe 300 miles away to 200 miles away from Westerly, Rhode Island, where he lived and where he broadcasted. He somehow contacted me. I don't remember how it came about. I really do. I don't have a recollection of exactly how we got together. I may have seen him online doing something or saying something, and I was intrigued by it. And he contacted me and asked me if I was interested in doing anything with him. And I said, well, our distance is an issue. Turned out that it really ended up really not being an issue with today's technology. But this was about 6 years ago. Now with the prolific use of remote studios, you can do a show from anywhere. And I regret not doing that, frankly, looking back. But going to his station, he invited me to the radio station and proceeded to tell me for over dinner, and we sat and had a lovely dinner together. And he told me about his love of radio, and particularly WNBC. And it was one of those jaw-dropping moments where somebody is paying you a tribute and wanting you to do something for me, meaning him. And I didn't take that very lightly at all. I was honored, and he showed me around town where he worked. He went into certain businesses with me and introduced me, and everybody knew the guy. He was. You
can say that again.
He was that town.
Yes,
and he had a way about him where he just pushed himself right into everything that happened in that town and that area. It's a small area. It's a small market. But he served his constituents, if you will, his listeners, and the area better than anyone I think I've ever known in the radio business in my 52 years of doing this.
So many have told me the same thing that you just said right there. And he served his community of license better than any station that I've ever heard.
Yeah, and it was different. The station, didn't conform to any formatic, so to speak, because it was all over the place at times. But it was truly a station for the people. And I think a lot of broadcasters, nationwide and local, have forgotten that. And I think hopefully he won't be the last one to do that, but it's a breed that is very rare today, to find someone who is that dedicated to not only his craft, because it is a craft, what we do, but he was dedicated to the area he served, which is really the reason why radio stations have a license to broadcast.
Exactly.
You're supposed to serve the community.
Mm-hmm.
And, it can mean playing music. It can mean doing news. It can mean specialty shows. It may be brokered programming. It may be whatever. But if it serves the public in a way that is meaningful, then he gets an A+ from me. I mean, I just saw him for one day, and I've never seen anybody move as fast as he did. He was able to, go get a check from a client and then for advertising, and then set up a remote, 40 miles away at a car dealership, all within this in about an hour and a half time. And it was just amazing what he was able to do, because he loved broadcasting. And it is a unique profession.
Mm-hmm, it sure is.
Not everybody can do it. And he did it with a passion that I don't think I have ever seen. I have a passion for radio, but this guy, my God, he was a whirlwind of energy, and did it because he wanted, to make money, of course, but that's a given, and that's his right to do that. We do live in a free society, which is great. Mm-hmm. And he was able to program what he thought the public in general would like to hear. Now, you can't be everything to everybody.
But that's about as close as you could get, because he served his community with, he covered every local event. If there was a charity out there, he got it on the air. Yep. If there was a valid charity, he got it on the air. The city council, the town council was on with their every single meeting he put on the air. He put on high school football, high school softball, all these events. Any organization that needed help, he was there for. This man did every possible community service event that he could possibly dream up, or that anyone ever had. Yeah. That is the very definition of what radio is supposed to do. And it's also a reason why his AM station is doing extremely well. Yes, they have an FM translator, but it doesn't go as far as the AM does. No. I mean, it's a very small footprint. Yeah. Now, since you and I talked last, after we did the Labor Day 2021 Time Machine, he contacted me and asked me if I would build the time machine for WBLQ. Wow. And I thought to myself, I can do this. That I just come off a weekend where I recreated it. So I came up with a hybrid program, and we started it December 1st of last year. We're coming up on 11 months next week. And it's the WBLQ time machine that runs right here from this studio every night. Wow. So, I give them 12 hours worth, and we're tracked or live 6 to midnight and 5 to 6 a.m. So, and Chris has loved every minute of it. He ate it up. He thought it was great, and he's thanked me so much over these past few months. How could I not just put everything I've got into it just for him? Because of who he is. He was that kind of a person. Yeah, he was not only a pretty cool guy, he knew what he was doing. He really did. No, he had a vision. And he took it to the extreme. And that is something that not many radio people are willing to do today, because, he was not the norm.
and he couldn't be the norm. How can you run a successful business? And he had to be so far out of the loop of what other companies did and do that I have to applaud his actions. And they were genuine, they were real, and it all stemmed from listening to a transistor radio, probably, or a boombox at the time, listening to what became his favorite station.
So thank you for doing the interview. I really appreciate you coming on. I know we didn't get to actually go on the air last time with anything, but it sure is nice having you on record about the start of the Time Machine and your days at WNBC. There will never be another station, another show, another event like that. I don't think not in the condition radio is in today. I just don't see it.
No, I don't either. I don't. And sadly, I don't. And I'm doing, if I can give myself a plug, I don't know if you're interested in hearing this, but I do a Monday through Friday 4-hour radio show on the internet on a station that's called Oldies XL. And
sounds interesting.
Well, the fact is that the word oldies now has been denuded, if you will.
Yeah, right.
Because it used to mean good
yes.
time. You know, that's what oldies meant, and in the still of the night, and that sort of thing. I think here we are in the 2020s, and oldies can be 80s and 90s music. Even they're oldies. They're by the definition of what the word meant.
Yes, 20 years. Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Art LeBeau, who just passed away, made a whole lifetime out of oldies, and he came up with the phrase oldies but goodies. Mm-hmm. And I think that we can use the term, and it means something different to every generation, if you will, or even subgroup of every 6 years of listeners. What they think of the oldies is when they were a teenager. Generally, it's the music you were listening to when you were a teen, and it's usually 5 years of your 15th birthday. So anything from 10 years prior, 5 years prior, and 5 years after your 15th birthday is usually the music you gravitate to. That's a vast generalization, but I think that's true. So if you have somebody who's 45, it's a different than somebody who's 65. It's a different thing. And so we decided at this station I'm doing to play 60s, 70s, and 80s. Now, we don't play too much. We don't play any 50s at all because we felt that it sounds so different largely than the music of the 60s and beyond because of the technical sound of it, and the quality of it was different. It's just a different genre, if you will. And so we're somehow able to blend those 3 decades together, and I've been working tirelessly to make that sound happen. It's still a work in progress, but I'm having fun, and I'm allowed to do what I want to do during my show. I do play a lot of music, but I do stop down and tell a joke or do something that's pertinent or something that interests me in the news.
How's the station? Yeah, how's the station doing?
Pretty good. I mean, we have advertisers, and it's being run like a real radio station.
Boy, that's amazing. Cool. There are hundreds of thousands of internet stations on now, and almost none of them are making a dime. So
well, we are, and we are because the product is pretty good, and we're adding people all the time. There's a new morning guy starting soon, and the guy's got major market cred. So the 3 main parts of the day are all going to be from major market DJs who still have it and still have the goods to do this.
That's
not
great.
Just a bunch of old guys. It's none of that. It's people who are still vital. And it sounds it. I mean, it just sounds very professional.
Well, congratulations are in order. I'm glad to hear that you're a part of that. That's good.
Yeah, it's kind of I didn't push my way into it, but I was able to get the owner of this property to change the brand from what it was prior to what it is now. And it seems to be successful. It seems to be working. And the music is tremendous. And it's on the weekends, we open up the playlist a little wider to play more of the songs you really don't hear that much anymore. Those are the oh wow songs that radio people know about. There are things like that. So that's what I've been up to. I mean, it's a lot of fun and it's a lot of work because I produce this thing like it's a major market radio show. I do it just as I always have, with preparation, with a lot of notes, handwritten things, typed things. I have things plastered all over the place that I can pull right out of my butt if I need to in a live situation. And
it's funny. Your wife is probably thinking like my wife is. You spend way too much time in that room. And she would be right, because to do a 3-hour show takes me 4.5 hours.
Right.
It's easily, if not more.
Yeah, my wife is asking me in the other room, what? How much time I spend doing this? And she knows, but yet she knows this is what I do and this is who I am, and she understands and appreciates what I do to a point. And then it's like, all right, that's enough for today.
We don't deserve them. Trust me, they're far more tolerant.
I know. We don't. I know. You're right. She is a goddess to me. So that's it's really amazing. So
I know.
Hello, Andrea.
Yeah. Wow. There you go. Right, Nance. There you go. Listen, our hour of time is up, and there are other things that need to play here. So. Thank you so much for coming on board today. I appreciate it. I know our listeners appreciate it very much. And Crazy Chris DiPaola would have really appreciated it. I know he's smiling from up there right now.
Yeah, he is. And I want to give my condolences to his widow and his lovely children and everybody that came in contact with that man. He was a walking dynamo. It was amazing.